Welcome back. A long-time professor at a top US college has been placed on leave after refusing special treatment for black students. A group of students had asked UCLA teacher Gordon Klein for the final exam to be postponed for them due to the impact of George Floyd's death. This was Klein's response.
Any idea if any students are from Minneapolis? I assume that they probably are especially devastated as well. I'm thinking that a white student from there might possibly be even more devastated by this, especially because some might think that they're racist, even if they're not.
But the punishment of Klein has forged deep divisions, with opposing petitions appearing in response. One is demanding he's fired, while the other wants the 27-year lecturer reinstated. The petition supporting the professor has far more signatures. OK, let's bring in two guests now. We have political analyst Reese Everson and political and social issues YouTuber and blogger Brian Logan. Welcome to you both. First to you, Reese. What did you think of the professor's email that got him put on 3 months' leave?
You know what? When I heard what he said, the first thing that came to mind is that this person has had encounters with being called racist himself. He had to. When he talked about maybe someone would mistake you for being racist, I think he's speaking from his personal experience, and that may be because a lot of what he said in his email had undertones of racism. He literally made a mockery of the fact that people who were experiencing the George Floyd death and dealing with the trauma of that as an African-American person in America, that they would have any type of real trauma. He dismissed it. He made a mockery of it. And frankly, it's disgusting and disappointing, frankly, that someone in his position would belittle the experience of students that he's supposed to be caring for.
And Anthony, what was your interpretation of the email?
I thought what he said was right on point. It's like, okay, come on, what are we doing? We're doing online classes. How am I going to even know who's black, who's white, or whatever? And what he was talking about as far as the white people that may live in Minneapolis feeling a little bit more sympathetic, that could be right, because the person that brought the complaint to begin with was what they said, a quote unquote white ally. So, I mean, where was a black person that came forward and said, hey, can we take off exams? Can exams not count because we're going through a thing? I mean, I can understand if they knew the person, if that was their brother or friend. I mean, but come on. People don't know this man. They're not related to him. So how can they really be so overtaken with grief to the point where they can't just go about their normal everyday life? I thought that was just really ridiculous. I thought it was an excellent email that the professor sent in return.
Reese, do you think Professor Klein's email, was it the content of his response in refusing any kind of preferential treatment, or was it the tone of it that was the problem and why he's been suspended?
Well, two things. We do have to address the point that ABL made. Number one, the letter that was sent in that he responded to, Professor Klein, was from a student who phrased himself as a white ally. So here's the issue with that. If you're an ally of people of color, black people, if you're an ally of Black Lives Matter, then guess what? You've got to step up and pay the price for allyship, and it doesn't come free, because guess what? As an African American, none of our freedoms in this country have come at the price of anything less than blood for the most part. So if you want to be our ally, know that you're going to have to stand up and you're going to have to pay a price. And that's been the case way back in the 60s with Goodman Cheney and other people who have lost their lives standing up for the freedom of African Americans in this country. So that's issue number one. Pay the price and don't be afraid to do it. Don't chicken out and say, oh, can we get a no-fail grade? That's not being a true ally. Secondly, as far as the letter, it was definitely the tone, but the content as well. He literally mimicked and mocked the fact that people would have any type of pain as a result of George Floyd's death. Now, let me make this point very clear. I don't know George Floyd personally, but as a black woman in America, and maybe ABL himself doesn't have this experience, and maybe he doesn't identify in his blackness, but as a black woman in America, I remember being pulled over by the police because I was African American. I remember feeling afraid for my life. I know what it's like to have people who are African American that I care about come in contact with the police and fear for their very life. And because of that, the death of George Floyd resonates with me strongly, and it's a mourning when women, me being a woman, when I know that I can birth a child who will be killed or who can be killed simply because of the color of his skin.
All right, but I'm gonna tell you
to
something right
create
here
a
though about the
national
whole
mourning.
thing about the blackness. About the whole blackness part. I mean, I come from the hood. I'm from Virginia. I grew up in the mostly like predominantly black area all my life. I know what it's like to have to like duck bullets from other black people coming through my window. I know what that's all about. So this whole thing about, oh, maybe you don't identify. No, I definitely identify. I know where the real grief, I know where the real problems are coming from. It ain't from the white man. It ain't from the police. It's from us. So when I see people like out here grieving for George Floyd,
maybe you don't
okay,
fear being pulled over by the
might see
police
it and feel sad, but you ain't gonna be grieving for weeks. You don't know this man. You ain't gonna be grieving for weeks. People at worst, people are grieving more for George Floyd than they would for their own grandmama or their own granddaddy. I don't really understand the big issue here.
And that's
honestly.
not accurate either. That's not accurate either.
I can't tell.
As a people in this country,
tell.
what we're seeing are black people who are responding to a collective body of pain. If you're familiar with the phrase pain body, there's a collective pain body of hundreds of years of pain from oppression, slavery, and other things that have basically impacted the mind. And a lot of black people carry what we call a post-traumatic stress disorder because of the experiences
I don't have
that we've
that.
had in
I don't
this country.
identify with that
And so
pain.
maybe ABL, when you see the police, maybe if you've been pulled over, you're not concerned that they see black first and that you're a man second. But many people in this country who walk around in an African-American skin or black skin have that fear, and it's a very real concern.
Reese, what do you think about what the professor wrote in his response? He quoted Martin Luther King saying that people should not be evaluated based on the colour of their skin. Surely you wouldn't want discrimination in favour of black students because of the colour of their skin, though.
You know, I'm so disgusted by the people who attempt to invoke Martin Luther King Jr. anytime they feel as though they're losing the battle on racism, or they want to placate people, or they bring in this whitewash, sanitized Martin Luther King Jr. in order to placate and shout down people. But here's the one thing that they never seem to understand. The very people that he was talking about in his letter from a Birmingham jail, he was talking about the white moderates who always tell people, not now, not that way, don't riot, don't loot, don't do this, don't have an uprising, don't have a revolt, don't have rebellion. Why? Because those are the very liberal white people who will tell black people, now is not the time for you to fight oppression. Don't do it in that way. Don't use that tone. This professor in his letter, the way that he responds is the very thing that Dr. Martin Luther King was speaking against. And so he invokes Dr. King and makes a mockery of what he stood for. And it's just, I'm tired
Anthony, I just want to give you a chance to respond. What do you think of the tone of it? Because regardless of the content, this is a really sensitive time now in America over racial issues. And couldn't one say that it could have been worded an awful lot more sensitively?
I mean, it's no more time for that. You just got to be honest. You got to be straightforward. Trying to be sensitive, trying to just placate towards feelings. I mean, there's no need for that. Just be honest. Just be real. One thing I would say to anybody that's out here watching, I don't care what color you are, if you're feeling bad for black people because of one person that died, don't do that. Just be honest. Just be yourself. And there's no need to be, intentionally nasty or intentionally just overly nice. Just be real. And what he was doing in that letter was being real. And if you are against racism, if you're against discrimination, you should be in favor of what he said in the letter. He's like, look, I'm not going to treat black students any differently. I'm not going to give anybody any kind of special anything because of their skin color. Everybody gets treated the same. OK, like I said, if that was like your dad or your uncle, somebody that you knew that passed away, that's different. But we don't know this man. People may have got upset when they saw the video, but you really don't know this man. You really don't have internal issues with it. And if you do, you got to get checked out. Something else is going on with you, because when people die every day in the community, there's not some kind of collective pain or collective outrage. When I was a kid, I seen people get shot in their head when I was 8, 9 years old. Classmates get shot, killed by other black people. Where some kind of collective pain and all of that. We don't talk about that right now. We talk about George Floyd because it's something that's popular. It's on the news. It's in the media. It's on the internet. And we just kind of get wrapped up into it and identify with that. We should just focus on what we got to focus on, which is our schoolwork and our actual work where we actually get paid money at, and our families take care of that. rather than me worrying about what's happening over in Minneapolis that's not affecting us every day.
Guys, I really wish that we had more time. Unfortunately, we don't. It's been a pleasure to speak to you both, though. Political analyst Reese Everson, political social issues YouTuber and blogger Brian Logan. Thanks so much for your views.